Color guard, both the colors. Post colors. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you will, please pray with me in the beliefs and traditions of Christian faith. Eternal God of all, we gather here today looking back to see the paths our ancestors have taken. We are ever grateful for the courage and forethought of our founding fathers and for this piece of legislation that guided not only our Ohio territory, but also became the path for our nation. Looking forward to see our own path, we honor those who have gone before us, learning from their successes and failures. We celebrate who we are today and welcome the possibilities and opportunities before us. As we celebrate and honor the insightful provisions of the Northwest Ordinance, we ask that you will stir our minds and stimulate our hearts with a high sense of patriotism. May all that this day symbolizes renew our faith in freedom, our devotion to democracy, and redouble our efforts to keep a government of the people, by the people, and for the people truly alive in our world. Just as our forefathers relied on your guidance, now grant that we may resolve to dedicate ourselves anew to the task of ushering in an era when goodwill shall live in the hearts of free people. Justice shall be the light to guide their feet, and peace shall be the goal of humankind. Amen.
Thank you. This time, Nancy Oliver.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Just look down. And I wanted to say to the color guard, you are magnificent. Take your coats off. You're making me very nervous. I find that sometimes the best laid plans in life go backwards or sideways. And that's when you keep your sense of humor and you say, thank you, Congregational Church. You are amazing. We really appreciate you. Because today is official. It is the 238th anniversary celebration of the Northwest Ordinance. A document that people will look at you and say, huh? However, it's a learning process because the Northwest Ordinance allowed us to be who we are today. And there are so many facets to it. And you're going to learn about many of those today. But it was something that was the first of its kind. As we are the first of our kind in a new nation to start the expansion of a new country. And here we are, because Ohio was the first. We have a schedule of speakers today that will give you unbelievable history, provoking thoughts, some smiles, and a great sense of pride in Ohio's place in American history. This is something that is powerful, and it is important to continue discussing and passing on. It is something that means a great deal to us now and to those who come after us. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the mayor of the great city of Marietta, Mayor Josh Stewart.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today representing the city. Thank you all for attending today for this special day. And I'd be honored to Also thank our special guest, Governor DeWine, and Mrs. DeWine, Marietta. So thank you for coming today. For this.
Mayor Stolman, I know you didn't know that you had some that you're about to learn about. Indeed. I have the honor and the privilege of introducing to you two people, actually. The governor of our state and first lady, who are amazing individuals in so many different ways. And lots of times when you get public pronouncements, their bio, their resume, goes on for 45 minutes because they are such accomplished people. In fact, sometimes reading the introduction is longer than the remarks. So I'm taking a different tack today because I can. And I want to introduce to you a man who's a husband and a father and a grandfather and a great-grandfather. A man who was a member of Congress, a lieutenant governor, an attorney general, a U.S. senator. That provides a breadth of knowledge, not only of our nation, but most specifically, his foresight in the state of Ohio. And what it's all about to be an Ohioan, and in this state, and I can tell you, I've got some scratches to prove it. It's a huge state. It's a diverse state. It's urban, it's rural, it's suburban, it's a little bit of everything. And to try and govern that and develop a policy that's applicable for all people, almost impossible to do. However, when you have a governor with that incredible background and the basis of his family and his very incredible wife, the first lady of the state of Ohio, we are very fortunate because Mike DeWine works for us. He works for Ohio. He thinks about Ohio and all parts of Ohio. And that's something we need to keep in mind and remember. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to the 70th Governor of the State of Ohio, Mike DeWine.
Morning, everybody. Nancy's old school says she's got the people pass. So. I love this. You know. It's great to be. Fran and I are delighted to be, first of all, in Marietta. Every time we come to Marietta, it's a real treat. Even though it was raining out there, it was still beautiful to see the river, the people running by in the pathway. It's just really great. Marietta is obviously very special. I'm going to quote a friend of mine, Steve George, who's a history connection, Nancy knows Steve, and he described it well. He said, all of Ohio began here, at the confluence of the Skingham Ohio rivers, the original part of it all. So we're here in the original part of it all. I want to say something about my friend Nancy. Friend and I, Nancy, have been friends for many years. Won't say how many years, but a long time. I told Nancy a moment ago that she is, anytime that someone comes into the governor's office, and the office in the State House is the same office that every governor's had since the State House was built, and it was finished right before the Civil War. And I actually sit at a desk that is referred to as the Lincoln desk. Now, obviously, Abraham Lincoln is not from Ohio, but it just so happened that after Lincoln was elected president, he was making a trip to Washington and his family left Springfield, Illinois, but they didn't do it the direct route. They decided that they really wanted to try to unify the North at that time. So he stopped in state capitals and other places. Actually stopped in Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati, Ohio. But when he came to Columbus, he spoke to the legislature. Then he was speaking with the governor. The governor was Governor Dennison. And the desk is the same desk. And so the bills that you see signing bills, that is the same desk. Lincoln sat at across from Denison. And so it happened that that was the day that the electoral college votes were counted by the United States Congress. So it was right at that spot that he got the telegram. Pinkerton detectives walked in literally and handed him a telegram saying that officially he had been declared President-elect of the United States. So, Nancy Hollister. Well, part of what I do is I pull out the drawer. And I don't know if any of you know the tradition in the United States Senate, but in the United States Senate, you pull out a drawer, you can look down there, every senator has ever occupied that desk with his name. I'm proud to say that Marietta's own Nancy Hollister put her name there. And so I talk about Nancy as well as the other governors who put their names. Nancy has reminded me I need to put my name there at some point. So it's great to be here. My friend Paul Brew will be talking more about the ordinance and about the whole issue with many things that the ordinance did. But to me, what is interesting, and to me, this is the one document, the one act that Congress, actually Congress, but that I think we sometimes forget about. And it is, to me, an amazing document. If you think about it, 13 original states, all jealous of their own power. Now, provision is made for going to settle this territory. And instead of just saying, well, it's going to be a territory, we're going to govern it, they did something which I think is really unique. They said, they provided for, this could be 3 to 5 states. When those states come into the union, they will be equal to the 13. So that is diluting the power of Massachusetts or Maryland or whatever state. But they did that, and they did that willingly. And to me, that's just kind of an amazing thing they would do. The second thing I find amazing about it is that they just laid out a plan. When you read through that, they just said, this happens, and this happens, you'll be governed at first this way, and then eventually it will become, when it hits a certain number, you'll be able to petition to become a state of the union. But they even went further. When you think about it, this is how many years, almost 100 years before we fight the Civil War over slavery. But in this document, slavery was accepted. But in this document, they said none of these states would allow slavery. So freedom of religion is spelled out in there. So to me, that's quite amazing. Trial by jury, something again we all kind of take for granted. Put that right in there. And then one we don't think about all today, the right for widows and children to inherit. You go back in history, many times the widow was left with nothing, and children left many times with nothing. Daniel Webster described this document as, he said, we are accustomed to praise the lawgivers of antiquity, but I doubt that any one single law has produced more distinct, marked, or lasting character than the Ordinance of 1787. Samuel P. Chase said, never in the history of the world did legislators so accurately fulfill and so mightily exceed the expectations of the legislators. No legislation that is accurately and mightily exceed the expectations of those who wrote it. So pretty high praise. Finally, I'm going to talk for a moment about education. No Paul's going to talk about that. But again, this is a time when public education was really not in most states, where people had to deal with that themselves if they dealt with it at all. And here they provide for a mechanism for public education. And basically saying in every township there would be something set aside that would be for the school or for the funding of the school. Wherever you go in the state of Ohio and go where to look, you can still find one of these schools, one-room schoolhouses that really came about because of this visionary perspective. All of you know about David McCullough and his book, which Marietta obviously is featured foremost in. Many of you had the chance to meet him when he came here, and Fran and I had the opportunity to have him at the governor's residence, and sit around, literally sit around the table and talk with him, which is one more phenomenal things. Here's what he said. I'll read you the thing. Quotes what the document says. Religion, morality, and knowledge is necessary for good government and happiness of mankind. Schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. And then the color goes on and says, with such emphasis be put on education in the vast new territory, for even one permanent settlement that had established was extraordinary. But of even greater importance was the fact that outside of New England, there was then no such thing in the United States as a system of state-supported schools of any kind. And even New England, schools were poorly taught, housed, and partly supervised and leased. Before the year was out, the contract between the Ohio Company and the Board of Treasury would be specified that a section of each township be reserved for common school to be given potentially to the use of a university. So lower education, higher education, all spelled out right there in that document. So truly amazing document. One of the things that I've been working on with our team is how do we emphasize social studies, teaching history more in school. We very understandably have focused on reading, something that we in our administration really put a great emphasis on, the science of reading. We emphasize math, we emphasize science. All those are vitally important. But somehow I think that in doing all that, we've squeezed out a little bit some of our history and some of the teaching and the learning of our history. So we're kind of working on that a little bit to make sure that we always are able to emphasize the knowledge of knowing where we came from, knowing what the basic principles of our country were and are, I think, of the Senate. We talk often about the divisions of this country. We talk about how we're pulled apart as people, but there's always been divisions. There's always been divisions. There's always been people going back and forth about things. But I think the one thing that should hold us together, does hold us together, is those basic principles. And many of them were certainly most important, were outlined even before the Constitution, before the Bill of Rights, outlined in the ordinance of this 1787. So very important, and thank you all. Delighted to be here in this historic and beautiful church. Pastor for allowing us to slip in here and get out of the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. We appreciate those remarks. And yeah, I still have yellow packets. It's kind of amazing. I can pull them out of boards everywhere. So this morning, as I was trying to prepare myself to run through this schedule and leave you with some exciting thoughts, the twins came down from breakfast. They're 6. Or I said, Grandma, you need words. I said, it's okay. Grandma doesn't need words today. She just needs to keep on. And she said, no, you need words. So I was presented with this. Cora's words. Yep, thank you, Cora. And I looked at it and I said, oh, Mom. And she said, well, everybody needs words. Okay. And then Judson ran in and he said, it's going to rain. I said, no, it's not going to rain. Yes, it's going to rain. Take my umbrella. Well, his umbrella with smiley faces on it doesn't really cover me very well. But I was glad to have it as I was running to the rain. So the twins were very involved in all of this. And it was fun. We had a great time. You know, what's your message? Thank you. The importance of this ordinance to who we were yesterday and who we are today and who we will be tomorrow is so very, very important. And quite frankly, it's not a long document. It's a good document that you can read and gather points from and teach to, etc. So continue the hard work on education for all. We appreciate it very much. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker today. And this is a gentleman who has done some amazing things. He's a graduate of OSU. He has a master's of history education from Xavier University. And he became a teacher, a social studies teacher, in Washington Courthouse, where he became an absolute icon to folks about how to teach history, how to learn, how to participate. In fact, he's received so many numerous statewide awards for education that it's too numerous to mention. They're voluminous. He's also received a number of national recognitions, from the History Channel all the way to Time magazine. So it's someone who Paul really understands history. He has a great grasp of that. Plus, he grew up on a farm in Lower Ohio, so of course that counts for a lot. It does indeed. But today, he is the president of the Ohio School Board. And I was teasing him when he came in because once upon a time, I had the interesting pleasure of serving on that school board at a rather fractured moment in its history. And I looked at him and said, "You, sir, are amazing," because he's leading and guiding them through some difficult times that they have to work with. And they are folks of many opinions. But he is also the co-chair of America 250 Ohio Education Committee, and is doing some marvelous things with that you're going to be seeing and hearing about, if you're not seeing and hearing about already. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Paul Fuller.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome our honored guests, Governor Michael Wine, Celebration Committee co-chairs, former Governor Nancy Hollister, Marietta Mayor John Slicker, Patty Ullman, Regent, Marietta Chapter Daughters of the American Revolution, Gene Yost, Marietta Chapter Sons of the American Revolution, as the entire Celebration Committee. Friends and supporters of history, and because this is about education, I want to give a special shout out to some educators that are here today. Kyle Newton, Superintendent of Ward Local, is with us, as well as the treasurer. And also Drew Hartle is sitting over there, who is a teacher at Fort Fry. He's one of the, these are what we call boots on the ground, because these are the folks who are actually teaching. And if there are any other educators here, again, we talk a lot about education, but we don't always give a shout out to the folks that are doing it, and we sure appreciate it. We're here today to celebrate the signing of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And I must admit, as a career high school history teacher, I likely did not do justice to this amazing document. Even worse, I used to talk trash about the American government under the Articles of Confederation, describing it as a failure. The truth is, the Land Ordinance of 1785 and the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 were huge victories. Wow, I sound like a really lame teacher. I also was never able to master the exploding fist bump. Young, who even probably do that? I taught next to a young teacher, and he was like the best at the exploding fist bump. I guess I'm a work in progress. Today, public education is in the news on a daily basis. Samuel Lewis, Ohio's first superintendent of common schools, was elected by the Ohio legislature in 1837. That's literally 50 years after the Northwest Ordinance. So it's fascinating. The first day submitted. In his first annual report, he notes, the legal foundation of common schools in this state may be laid at the Ordinance of Congress passed in 1787, providing for the government of the territory of which Ohio formed a part. In this document, certain great principles were laid down, which must be necessary to be incorporated into the constitutions of the state. The third article states the following: religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. And Governor Wine focused on that. I think this is the magic phrase. Schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. It's unbelievable the foresight that in 1787, they had the foresight to think about that, which it rings absolutely is true today. Let me take a moment to define the term common school. Common school was intended to be a school that was free and accessible to all. And again, as Governor DeWine mentioned, school was not free and accessible to all at that time. So this was really a vision of the future. And it's really a vision for us today. This is truly one of the cornerstones of American democracy. Today we use the term public school instead of common school. The Northwest Ordinance of 1787 was the North Star for public education in Ohio. Superintendent Lewis wanted to know what education looked like in 1837. He accomplished this by traveling more than 1,200 miles, visiting 40 county seats. Ohio only had 8 counties in 1837. Visiting more than 300 schools. He traveled by horseback. Can you imagine the state superintendent wanting to know what's going on and saying, you know what, the only way I'm going to find this out is by getting on my horse. And that's what he did. He described his mission this way. He said, occasion has been taken to visit many schools in this country and to converse with teachers, children, school officials, and parents. Superintendent Lewis compiled his observations in 1838, and he gave them to the legislature. He talked about some of the very same topics we talk about every day. He talked about teachers. He wrote, in almost every place, either in town or country, complaints are made that good teachers cannot be had. Today, school districts work to find the best teachers for their classrooms. Rural Southern Ohio deals with the shortage of teachers in certain content areas. Again, I'm a product of rural Southern Ohio. I am pleased and proud of Ohio's 113,000 teachers who educate 1.6 million Ohio students daily. School finance. Superintendent Lewis wrote, we say free schools, not that we would urge the legislature to supply all means, but funds must come from legislative and township actions combined. The original basis for funding education in Ohio can be found in the Land Ordinance of 1785. One section, specifically section 16, which was the equivalent of 640 acres out of the 36 survey, was to be set aside for public education. And again, in the Land Ordinance of 1785, it literally says, maintenance of public schools. And again, that is that foundation. This was the practical beginning of public education in Ohio. Many of the approximately 7,000 Revolutionary War veterans buried in Ohio came here because they had earned bounty land warrants for their service in the Revolutionary War. And again, you talk about the heart of it all. When you were in this community that tied back to the Revolutionary War, and again, it's throughout the state, but you can almost feel it. Today, the Ohio legislature just completed the 2-year budget, which includes provisions for helping fund Ohio's 610 public school districts. As Superintendent Lewis noted in 1837, funding needed to be a combination of state and local sources. Today, at the state level, public schools receive 41% of their funding from local sources and 38% of their funds from the state. Each individual school district receives state funds based on the relative wealth of the district. Now, this is fascinating. The number of school districts in 1838, 7,748. Now that makes sense because they started as townships. But in his report he says, some plan on reducing the number to 1/2 or even 1/4 would be a great improvement. Again, this large number can be traced back to the original being organized as a township level. Neighboring states of West Virginia and Kentucky organized school districts by county. Today, there are 610 public school districts in Ohio that educate 83% of the 1.6 million Ohio students. School districts. One of the things that he talks about is, Superintendent Lewis says, school districts' great inconvenience is suffered by their irregularity, made by the lack of uniformity in size of the district. Some are much too small, others too large, in all varieties of shape. Today, Ohio has large and small school districts. Nearby Switzerland of Ohio is our state's largest district at 548 square miles. Ohio has approximately a half dozen districts that are 1 to 2 square miles. One of my favorites is the Bullion Bay School on Ohio's South Bass Island, Key Lake Erie. The district covers 2.5 miles. It has 72 students, K-12. It has no transportation or school cafeteria. They don't need it. And in the winter, when the ferry no longer runs out to the island, they must fly to basketball games. My wife and I were up there last summer and met with the superintendent. It was great. Yeah. So, I mean, it's fascinating when you think about the differences between districts, and yet they all work. It all works. The length of the school year. Superintendent Lewis wrote, as it will be impossible to give a full history of my observations, in one town, a free school is taught 3 months by one teacher in a district where more students desire to attend. Today, Ohio schools are required by the number of hours, not the number of days. Grades 7 through 12 require a minimum of 1,001 hours, which works out roughly about 166 days. School resources. Superintendent Lewis wrote, school books. This is a subject of great complaint. It is said that every new teacher orders new books. Today, questions and issues with textbooks are still common. Students use computers and technology to supplement traditional textbooks. The future will include increased use of artificial intelligence by both students and teachers. School facilities. Superintendent Lewis wrote about schoolhouses. The difficulty on this subject is immense. There are now 3,370 districts without a schoolhouse. Now remember, there were 7,000 school districts when he wrote this. In many places, the schoolhouses now provided are wholly unfit. No task is as heavy as a schoolhouse task. Today, we deal with issues of school facilities. Local districts constantly work to finance and improve school buildings. The Ohio Schools Facilities Construction Commission partners with local districts to support the creation of safe, healthy learning environments for students. Superintendent Lewis even talks about public libraries. And he says this, the benefits resulting from township or district libraries would be great. The districts are so numerous they can hardly hope to have a good library in each, however desirable it might be. A school library could be provided for each township, which being located at or near the center, could be there to accommodate all schools. Today, Ohio's public library system is a powerful partner with public schools. Growing up on a family farm in rural southern Ohio, I still have fond memories of the bookmobile coming to Brigham Elementary. And I can tell you the number was 3. That's how many books you could get. I remember I was always very judicious about but I mean, that was a big deal. And again, so we partner, and again, the governor has been really supportive of public libraries as well as public schools. And that's a big deal, because sometimes think that it's different thinking. It's all part of the same, education process. Ohio's progress and growth. In 1837, Superintendent Lewis wrote, our state has more children under 16 years of age than any equal amount of population. Our people must soon number 3 million. Houses are almost in speaking distance. Villages are springing up and flourishing almost every time I see them. Today, Ohio has a population of slightly less than 12 million with a growing economy. 188 years ago, Ohio's first state superintendent wrote the first comprehensive report on the state of education in Ohio. More than a dozen years before the 1850-1851 Ohio Constitutional Convention, the vision set forth in the Northwest Ordinance still has meaning today. And again, it all goes back to Article 3, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government, the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Thank you.
That is amazing. The more things change, sometimes the more they stay the way they were. It is unbelievable, and I appreciate that information. To wind up our program today, we have very special guests. I call them magic storytellers. Because if you look at our history and all the things that happen in the world, telling stories about family, about happenings, well, it's so important because they can pass down the generations before they were put on paper. So today, we have with us 3 amazing storytellers, and they are going to bring historical guests to life, to let you know about folks who lived in this community in Ohio after the ordinance of 1787. So we have 3 different folks with us today, and the first will be Scott Britton, who is a Revolutionary War patriot. The Revolutionary War patriot. I hate notes, they just don't work. Scott Britton is going to inform us about the Revolutionary War patriot, Manasseh Cutler, and other things. Scott?
Good morning. Dr. Reverend Marietta was born in Killingly, Connecticut in 1742, the son of a farmer. He was tutored by a local minister and graduated with high honors from Yale University in 1765. He was particularly interested in natural history and the sciences, specifically astronomy and botany, and was a lifelong learner in a variety of other subjects. His contemporaries stated that his knowledge of science was only surpassed by Benjamin Franklin. He became a lawyer in 1767, but just 2 years later began pursuing theological studies under his new father-in-law, Reverend Thomas Balch of Benham, Massachusetts. In September 1771, he was ordained the pastor of the First Congregational Church of Ipswich, Massachusetts, and would passionately and faithfully serve that congregation for the next 52 years. On April 19, 1775, on the Lexington Alarm, Manasseh joined the Ipswich Minutemen as they marched to Cambridge, but arrived too late to join the fight before the British retreated back into Boston. In August of 1776, he served as a chaplain in a Massachusetts regiment that defended Boston for a term of 3 months. In the winter of 1777 and 78, he was listed on the Valley Forge muster rolls, suffering there as the chaplain of 11th Massachusetts Regiment, led by one of Marietta's leaders, General Benjamin Tupper. In August of 1778, he again served as a chaplain in the Rhode Island expedition to drive the British from that state once and for all. When he returned home to Ipswich, not resting on his laurels, he took up the study of medicine and astronomy. Medicine and anatomy. He was also interested in astronomy. And he earned a reputation as a doctor of being a safe and skillful practitioner. But he wasn't done yet. He opened a school at the same time for boys preparing to go to college or enter the ministry, operating that institution for many years afterwards. Finally, in June the 24th of 1787, Reverend Cutler, like Paul said, got on his horseback and rode off to the Continental Congress, which was meeting then in New York City, to negotiate the provisions that would be put into the Northwest Ordinance. Things that they would accept and things that they would not. There were some deal breakers in there that had to be in there. Successful in that endeavor, he then traveled to meet with other congressmen who were working on a draft of the U.S. Constitution in Philadelphia. Imagine that. They were working on 2 of the greatest documents ever written in history simultaneously.
Governor, First Lady, DeWine, Mayor Schlicker, and honored guests. My task today is to tell you about the first 2 pioneer women to teach in the Northwest Territory. Perhaps you've heard of the name Bathsheba. I'm not going to speak about the mother of King Solomon. Instead, we have our very own Bathsheba in Washington County. Her name is Bathsheba Rouse. Having turned down a marriage proposal in Massachusetts, Bathsheba came to Marietta at the age of 19 with her entire family. Her arrival was in December of 1788, just a day before ice made the rivers impassable. Her father had been a whaler in Massachusetts. During Bathsheba's first summer here, settlers in Belfry asked her to teach their youngest children. Those would have been the children who were too little to clear land and plant. She set up a classroom inside a log cabin on the banks of the Ohio River in Belfry. Her classroom is recognized as the first formal school in the Northwest Territory. Her classroom predated both the Putnam Family Library, established in 1795, and the Coonskin Library, established in Amesville in 1804. In the absence of organized libraries, Bathsheba would taught with the Bible, the New England Primer, and a few volumes of sermons. She married Richard Green, a member of the Ohio Colony, and the pair moved from Belfry to Marietta, where they raised 4 children. She died in Marietta at the age of 73 and is buried in the Mound Cemetery close to her husband and General Rufus Putnam. Our second early pioneer teacher was Mary Bird Lake. She was 41 years older than Bathsheba and served as a nurse during the Revolutionary War. George Washington personally thanked her for her, quote, tender, vigilant, and unremitting care of the sick soldiers. 6 years after the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1789, Mary Bird and her husband, who was a New York shipbuilder, moved to Marietta, and she founded the first Sunday school in the Northwest Territory. Her classroom was inside the home of General Putnam, which today is preserved on the original foundation inside the Campus Martius Museum. Mary Bird taught in the Putnam home from 1791 to 1795 and is recognized as the first schoolmistress in Marietta and the second in the Northwest Territory. She died in 1796 at the age of 68 and is buried in Rainbow, Ohio, 5 miles north of Marietta on the west side of the Muskego. Both Bathsheba and Mary Bird were brave women who left the comforts and safety of the East Coast to help settle the Northwest Territory. They both served honorably by educating the children of pioneers. Thank you.
Our last storyteller has an amazing tale to tell you, and I would ask Tony Durham to come forward and enlighten us on this amazing character. I'm sure you all go down Tupper Street all the time. Well, guess what's behind it?
Morning, everybody. I have to tell you, I just returned from a week at Boy Scout camp on Saturday. It was very wet, very hot, and the latter part of the week was very dry, but not nearly as uncomfortable as this. Major Anselm Tupper. Major Anselm Tupper was the oldest son of General Benjamin Tupper, who was born in Easton, Massachusetts, just south of Boston. Little is known of his childhood, but it's believed that he received a common school education, like his father, and developed a lifelong love of poetry. In May of 1775, Anselm left his home in school in Chesterfield, Massachusetts, to join his father in the fight for the American Revolution, but not with his father. He enlisted in Colonel Fellow's 8th Massachusetts Regiment at the astonishing age of 11 years and 7 months. I had 11-year-olds at camp, and I cannot imagine that. On Christmas Day of 1776, at the age of 13, he would join General George Washington's army as it crossed the ice-choked Delaware River to successfully attack the Hessians, the German mercenaries fighting for the British. They captured the towns of Trenton and Princeton and turned the tide. In September of 1780, at the age of 16, he was personally recommended for promotion to lieutenant by General George Washington and will serve as an officer for the remainder of the war. Incredible. In June of 1786, Anselm accompanied his father to the Ohio country to survey the Seven Ranges. The Seven Ranges land tract. That has a different connotation to me because I was at the Seven Ranges Scout Reservation. During that trip, he would visit Major John Dowdy, the commander at Fort Harmon, located just a few blocks from here on the west side of the Muskingum River. He would return to Marietta permanently 2 years later, landing with the first 48 pioneers not far from this spot on April 7, 1788. By 1790, Anselm was appointed commander of the militia at Campus Martius and was tasked with protecting the entire community. By 1791, the upper story of the northwest blockhouse of the Campus Martius stockade had been fitted up with benches and a rude, simple desk so as to accommodate an audience of 150 to 200 persons. It was used for a school, which was first taught by Major Anselm Cutler. The same room was also used for religious services on the Sabbath. Funds from the Ohio Company were paid to Anselm for his teaching duties, as well as to hire other teachers at Farmers Castle in Belgrade and at Fort Fry in Beverly. The Ohio Company would live up to the ideals of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 as it promoted the public education for all. Anselm was described as a fine classical scholar, a good mathematician, and something of a poet. He would die in Marietta at the age of 45 on December 25th, 1808, which was the 32nd anniversary of when that very teenage boy had crossed the Delaware to give General George Washington his first major battle victory. He's buried in our historic Mount Cemetery. Today, we remember that historic, heroic, and amazing man, the first teacher in the Northwest Territory, a patriot, a poet, a pioneer, Major Anselm Cutler.
He's 11 years old. And that's pretty amazing. And especially the career that we have. Thank you all to the storytellers. That's amazing. And it's always a very good thing to hear about folk who made such a difference in this city. And paved the way for us today. So, in closing, we can take of course notes. Wanted to bring us to the end of our presentation today, but what I wanted to tell you first was we have a proclamation from the Secretary of State, Franklin Rose, that has been presented to us, and we want to thank him for that. Also, I have been asked on behalf of Senator Ryan Chavez to tell you that he has secured $375,000 for the monument project in the park. So that's something unless you're giving me the signal there's somebody I miss. We're good? Wow. Okay. This is great. We are now at the closure, and we're thinking about closure. So much has been said here today. Filter through it. Think about it. Think about your family's history and what their contributions were, and how important we all are, because every single one of us makes a difference in the state of Ohio. And it's very true when it comes to the Northwest Territory, because we were the first state out of the Northwest, that Ohio was the start of it all. And indeed, it was the start of it all. But Marietta, Washington County, we are the heart of it. Enjoy it, celebrate it, and talk about it. I really appreciate all of you coming today, and I would like the pastor of the Congregational Church, Pastor Carl, to come up and give us a final words, ma'am.
On behalf of First Congregational Church, I want to once again welcome you all home to our sacred space. You have blessed it with the celebration of a history that includes us, because we were here from the first, but also that we hope to support as that history goes out and continues to change lives through freedom, through faith, through learning, that there might be more and better things along the lines of what was envisioned in the Northwest Ordinance. So, may God bless you and keep you. May God make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May God look upon you with favor and grant you peace. Amen.
Before the final dismissal of this event, I want to personally say thank you to someone who's always standing in the back of the room or over the side of the room, or always talking to you about, I need a few dollars for this project, or can we make this happen, it's magic. By the way, we have this project, and it only needs really, $1 or $2 million. It's not a problem. It's something we can do. There's nothing we can't do. That's his motto. And someone who works tirelessly to put together events like this. We've been doing this how many years? A long time. Yeah, never mind. Okay. I want you all to say thank you to Gene Yost for his Paul, thank you so much for your words and your education. I appreciate that. Governor, Fran, thank you so much for being here. It is always delightful to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned.